splattered in splotches on the Formica countertop. Bill Hopewell and Galen Provost exchanged a disconcerted look. Then Bill turned his gaze toward Tabby, who was still backed into her corner beneath the cat clock with the ticking eyes, gnawing on a thumbnail. "This is fine cocoa, Tabs," Mallory said, the words coming out in a sandpapery drawl. "Mighty fine." At the mention of her name, Tabby bumped into a shelf and sent a bottle of ketchup to the floor. "What you got all over them clothes?" Galen Provost said from across the room. Everyone was watching now. "Is that blood on your clothes, Joe?" Bill Hopewell asked, his tone less accusatory than Galen's, despite the directness of his query. Perhaps, Bill thought, Galen wouldn't have been so boisterous if he'd been standing right next to Mallory, where he could see the dirt collected in the creases of Mallory's face, the white nits in his hair and beard, and what looked like old blood beneath the man's fingernails. If he could see how off Mallory looked. Bill cleared his throat and said, "You've been up in them woods, Joe?" It was at that point that Joseph Mallory started to laugh. Or perhaps he started to cry. Bill Hopewell wasn't sure at the moment which one it was, and he would still be undecided about it much later, once Mallory's face was on the TV news. All he knew was that the noise that jutted from old Joe Mallory's throat sounded like a stubborn carburetor, and that tears were welling in the man's eyes. Bill Hopewell pushed himself off the counter and took 2 steps back. The laughter, or whatever it was, lasted for just a couple of seconds. When he was done, Mallory swiped the tears from his eyes with a large, calloused hand. He then dug a few damp bills from the inside pocket of his coat and laid them out flat on the countertop. He nodded in Tabby White's direction. Tabby just stared at him. Mallory's stool squealed as he rotated around toward Bill Hopewell. With some difficulty, he climbed down off the stool. His movements were labored and stiff, as if his muscles were wound too tight, his bones like brittle twigs. Those dark streaks across the front of Mallory's shirt were also on his coat and his pants, too, Bill realized. "Well, they're up there. The whole lot of them," Mallory said. His voice was barely a rasp. Later, Bill would have to relay what he'd heard to Galen Provost and the rest of the patrons of Tabby's luncheonette, who were just out of earshot. "They're all dead, and I killed 'em. But I'm done now, so that's that." He turned away from Bill Hopewell and looked at Tabby. "Val Drammel still the safety officer around here?" Tabby didn't answer. She didn't look capable. "He is," Bill Hopewell answered for her. "All right," said Mallory, turning back to Bill. He nodded once, as if satisfied. "One of you folks be kind enough to give him a call. Tell him I'll be sitting out by the church waiting for the Stadies to come collect me." "Yeah, okay," Bill said, too stunned to do anything else but agree with the man's request. "Much obliged," said Mallory, and then he turned and ambled out into the cold, gray morning. "Tabby?" Bill said, not looking at her. In fact, he was staring out the window, watching the gaunt form of Joe Mallory shamble up the road in the direction of the old church. "Best give Val Drammel a call, like he says." It took Tabby White a few seconds before she understood that she had been spoken to. She moved across the floor toward the portable phone next to the coffee station. One of her white sneakers smeared a streak of ketchup along the linoleum, but she didn't notice, and fumbled with the receiver before bringing it to her ear. "Val?" she said into the phone, her voice reed-thin and bordering on a whine. "It's Tabby down at the luncheonette." There was a pause, then she said, "I think I'll turn you over to Bill Hopewell." She handed Bill the receiver, and Bill set it against his ear. He was still watching Joe Mallory as he ambled up the road toward the church. At the horizon, the sky looked bleached and colorless. It promised to be a cold winter. "We got something here I think you should come take a look at," he said.